Well, a big story this morning. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reached the U.S. He landed at Maryland's Andrews Air Force Base on Sunday ahead of his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday. He was then welcomed at the Blair House in Washington on Sunday evening ahead of his important Tuesday meeting. It's a very important meeting, the Israeli Prime Minister told reporters before takeoff. Listen in. Well, Netanyahu said he would discuss with the president Israel's war against Hamas, the release of all the hostages, and the Iranian terror axis. His first high-level meeting will be on Monday with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. For more on this, we're joined by David K. Johnston from New York. He's a professor of public policy at the Rochester Institute of Technology. Really appreciate you joining us, Professor. I'd like to begin by asking you the question on everyone's minds this morning, rather, with Netanyahu's heading to Washington to redraw the map of the Middle East. Do you think this is a case of striking while the iron is hot, or is he walking a tightrope, balancing internal and international pressures?
Well, he certainly has to balance the internal pressures. Remember, he's being tried right now for serious corruption charges. But very plainly, Netanyahu is hoping to get Donald Trump's backing so that he can push Palestinians out of Gaza and other parts of what historically was Palestine. He can resume using the 2,000-pound bombs that the Biden administration stopped sending to Israel because they were being used to attack hospitals and apartment buildings rather than any kind of military targets. But I think Netanyahu clearly sees here's an opportunity he's not likely to get again to achieve his goal of basically pushing Muslims and especially Palestinians out of territory he would like to be part of Israel, or at least totally under military control by Israel.
Professor, Netanyahu also faces mounting pressure from the far right, in fact, back home. Now, to restart the war, is this a case of one step forward and two steps back for Israel?
Yeah, I don't think this ceasefire will hold for very long, and maybe not as long as anticipated for exactly that reason. His coalition of very far-right people in Israel, whose sons, by the way, do not serve in the combat forces, is very fragile. And keeping that together is essential to his staying in power. There are a lot of us who view his efforts in Gaza to maintain his power and avoid the prospect of going to prison.
Thank you so much for that, Professor. We keep on tracking this story. And moving on, Canada, Mexico, and China have vowed to respond to sweeping new tariffs to their exports to the U.S. announced by President Donald Trump. They're, in fact, set to take effect on Tuesday, that's tomorrow. Now, according to reports, Trump has also said EU tariffs will happen and the UK is out of line, but a deal could be worked out. My colleague Samia Afsar breaks down how the implementation of Trump's tariffs and the subsequent retaliation could mark the start of a new era of global trade wars. Take a look.
The tariff war has begun. As promised in his poll campaign, U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order slapping steep tariffs on imports from Mexico, Canada, and China. The move, which aims at curbing drug trafficking and illegal immigration, could also send shockwaves through the global economy. Donald Trump has imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports and 10% on Chinese goods. If these tariffs remain in place, they could drive up inflation, hitting American consumer where it hurts the most, at the checkout line. Canada and Mexico have announced retaliatory tariffs, with outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau warning that U.S. shoppers will soon feel the pinch.
Tonight, first, I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people, unfortunately. The actions taken today by the White House split us apart instead of bringing us together.
Mexico isn't holding back either. It has also ordered retaliatory tariffs that could possibly range from 5 to 20% on pork, cheese, fresh produce, manufactured steel, and aluminum. Meanwhile, China has slammed Trump's move. Beijing has warned that there are no winners in a trade war and has vowed to take necessary countermeasures to protect its economy. With 3 major economies fighting back, Trump's tariffs are setting the stage for a full-blown trade war, one that could have far-reaching consequences for businesses, consumers, and the global market. Samia Afsar, NDTV World.
Now, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce Raymond Vickery joins us from Washington for more. Welcome to the show, sir. I'll get straight to it. With retaliatory tariffs already in motion, how likely is the situation to escalate into a prolonged trade war?
Well, good morning and thanks for having me. I think that this is a very unwise move. Where it ends, nobody knows, but it's a very, very bad first step. I think the idea that somehow tariffs can be used to bludgeon friend and foe alike into doing whatever it is that the president wants to do is absolutely ill-founded. We tried the business of walling off the United States during the Great Depression with something called the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. It made the situation worse economically, and that was at a time when there wasn't nearly as much integration, international trade as there is now. I think it's particularly deplorable in regard to friends Canada and Mexico. Trump in his first term renegotiated NAFTA, so there would be integration on what he deemed to be even a fairer perspective. And now he has basically destroyed that arrangement. The history of the world is that widening markets where people play by the rules increases the prosperity for everyone. I think that this is going to raise the prices for American consumers. The president said that he would do away with inflation. Of course, he's already broken a number of promises that he would end the Ukraine war, and all sorts of good things would happen economically. I think it's particularly deplorable the impact this has on friends like India. The fact is that when Prime Minister Modi comes to the United States, Donald Trump has said that India is a great abuser of tariffs. He's threatened India, among the other BRICS countries, if they try to move away from dollar-denominated trade with 100% tariff. This is no way to run a railroad, much less the international economic situation. So as a former Assistant Secretary of Commerce, where we work so hard to bring about economic advantage through trade, this is very disheartening. And coupled with other things which are going on in the United States, the whole retaliation against enemies, the threatening of actual use of arms to get back the Panama Canal. It is a very dire situation and does not bode well for the United States or the world.
Well, thank you so much for that comprehensive insight, Mr. Vickery. We will stay on that story. Meanwhile, over in Canada, fans at a Toronto Raptors game continued an emerging trend Sunday of booing the American national anthem at pro sporting events across the country. Now, fans of the NBA's lone Canadian franchise booed the anthem after similar reactions broke out Saturday night at the NHL games in Ottawa, Ontario, and even Calgary, Alberta, hours after U.S. President Donald Trump made his threat of import tariffs on America's northern neighbor a reality. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has demanded that Panama make quote-unquote immediate changes to what he calls the influence and control of China over the canal. The warning follows President Donald Trump's vow to retake the canal and a meeting between Rubio and Jose Raul Molino. In fact, he's Panama's conservative president in Panama City on Sunday. Now, on the other hand, Molino told reporters he did not see a serious threat of U.S. military force to seize the canal, saying he had proposed technical-level talks with the U.S. to address Mr. Trump's concerns about Chinese influence. Now, clearly, the two men appeared to emerge from their 2-hour-long meeting with different interpretations, to say the least. Over in West Asia, the shifting sands of West Asia, rather, Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani on Sunday called on both Israel and Hamas to immediately begin negotiations on phase 2 of the Gaza ceasefire. Speaking at a press conference in Doha alongside Turkey's foreign minister, Sheikh Mohammed stressed that the ceasefire agreement requires both parties to engage and engage without delay.
Engaging with the parties in order to define the agenda and to start engaging in those discussions. There is nothing yet clear about where are the delegations will come and when it's going to take place, but at least over the phone these discussions has started. And we hope that we start to see some movement in the next few days. And I know that it's critical that we get things rolling from now in order to get to an agreement before day 42, and it's critical also to show that there is a commitment from both sides to engage in a good faith.
And there's more movement in West Asia. In fact, Syria's Ahmad al-Shara, alias al-Julani, is in Saudi Arabia, where he met Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on his first foreign trip since being named president of the transitional government earlier this week. After the meeting, al-Shara said that the meeting with MBS had shown that Saudi Arabia has a genuine desire to, in fact, support Syria in building its future. The Syrian interim president added that his meetings in Riyadh had included plans for cooperation in the fields of energy, technology, education, and even health. A group of 50 sick and wounded Palestinian children began entering Egypt for treatment through Gaza's Rafah crossing on Saturday. Interestingly, the first opening of the border since Israel captured it nearly 9 months ago. Thousands more are to follow. The reopening of the Rafah crossing represents a significant breakthrough that bolsters the ceasefire deal Israel and Hamas reached last month. Israel agreed to reopen the border crossing after Hamas released the last living female hostages in Gaza. Now, interestingly, Rafah is Gaza's only crossing that does not enter into Israel. Let's step into a short break. I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching The World 24/7 on NDTV with me, Arjun Samar Mahindran. As we keep on following geopolitics, there's some good news from the cricket pitch. Indian batter Abhishek Sharma on Sunday slammed his second T20I century during the 5th and final game of the series against England in Mumbai. Now, Abhishek reached the milestone in just 37 balls, missing India's captain Rohit Sharma and David Miller's all-time record by a whisker. Now, Rohit and Miller hold the record for the fastest century among the batters from Test-playing nations. Abhishek looked on the course of surpassing them at one point, but missed out in the end. Take a look at this special report.